So we are back from the Irish Free Speech Summit, which was against the Irish government's proposed bill on introducing legislation to protect people from hate speech, which in theory sounds like a lovely proposition, doesn't it? But that's of course until you realise what else that can be used for. What government really, if you can name any, has their citizens' best interests at heart? You'll see my time there on the full video. I just wanted to give a quick debrief, sort of, after the event. The adrenaline that I had the following day was up to here from speaking to so many people that had not necessarily the same beliefs as myself, because an echo chamber's good for nobody. And believe me, there was a wide range of opinions. Even if they shared the same beliefs as myself, their ideas of combating it might have been different. And that goes across the board. There were speakers at the event that were saying things that not everyone agreed with, but that was the whole point of the event. I'm trying to think of things you wouldn't have seen in the video. Basically, at the end of every topic or every panel, there was an opportunity for a Q&A, and the way you did this was obviously sending in your messages via X. There was one guy who, after the third or fourth round, had enough and just yelled out, "Why don't you take questions from the audience? You're trying to censor us." I don't think I got the applause he expected, because from speaking to the ADF after it, I don't think they're in the business, obviously, of censoring people. I think if you look at it logistically, that was more about trying to speed up the event. You were there from 6 to 9. We don't have time for every person in the audience to have a town hall meeting. That's what this is for. I do see where the guy was coming from, because we're used to living in a climate where organisations and the media want to censor people if they don't align with their opinions. But I will just say this, guys, any event I go to where we're doing filming on the street with the average person, I fully expect most of them don't want to be talked to anyway. Most of them don't want to be on camera. Perhaps they're just shy, which is fine. Or in an event like this, because of the nature of those topics, people were reluctant to talk on camera because they felt like it could cost them their jobs, which is a real shame. Could argue it's a little bit ironic that we're at an event to try and preserve our free speech while we can, and some people don't want to use it. But that's the situation we're in. And they did speak at the conference, about how the culture that's been created recently over the last few years, even if such a bill didn't pass, that culture is almost designed to make the average person afraid, especially if you're in Scotland. If you're in your own home, you should be able to say whatever the fuck you want to say. The Scottish government don't believe that, and this is an actual thing. This did pass. You can go and use the service now. I already have. I used it in day one to report Hamas Youssef, the former First Minister of Scotland, for how he spoke in the Scottish Parliament.
But why are we so surprised when the most senior positions in Scotland are filled almost exclusively by those who are white? The Chief Constable, white. Every Deputy Chief Constable, white. Every Assistant Chief Constable, white. The Chief Medical Officer, white. Almost every trade union in this country headed by people who are white.
That's racist.
I didn't hear anything back, and I know it wasn't the only person that did that, by the way. I don't think any of us heard anything back. Obviously, just that alone tells you, the fact that no one heard anything back, the fact that wasn't investigated, that alone should tell you the point that we're trying to make about the Irish bill. It is inherently going to be used to suit the government, not the people. Why is that? And most of the inspiration for starting the Sovereign Project came from 2020, and came from seeing how governments were handling any opposition from the people that they're meant to protect and serve. So just interesting that we've already seen this in practice, 3 months ago from the time of recording, in Scotland, and now here we are with people turning a blind eye in Ireland. And I don't think anyone should have any fear or embarrassment of speaking out against that kind of bill, especially if you intend to bring kids into the world. Do you really want your kids to grow up in a world that is that censored, is that boring, and that sterile? I certainly don't. It's important that you use your voice while you can. I've always said this, and I'm certainly not annoyed at those people who didn't want to speak to me on camera. I just felt a little bit, damn, it's happening already. So we've already seen from Scotland, and it looks like this is swarming to another Celtic country, to Ireland. The politicians that were on stage did speak about the fact that the government have kind of lost a little bit of momentum on this, especially after having two very progressive, and I use that deliberately in commas, referenda defeated this year. So I think that's kind of took a bit of bounce out of their step in terms of trying to put this bill through. However, even on the way down to the event, I was reading about this and had the idea in my head where I was like, that's only so good for now, all right? But and I'm not going to try and fear in the conspiracy theory territory here, but if you believe in the WEAF's agenda, especially the way Ireland's being used by these people, do you really think that that's the end of it? We lost a few referendums and that's the end of that? No, it's not about amending the bill, it's about abolishing the bill for good. And that doesn't just go for Ireland. I was pleased to hear that Sinn Féin, who are a left-wing party that I've often voted for an awful lot in the north of Ireland, they're a leading government in the north and in opposition government down south for the time being. Delighted to hear that they withdrew support for this. It's a shame they weren't so brave back in 2020, 2021 when it came to opposing Britain's vaccine mandates, but we'll leave it at that. That's a different video. After the event, they very kindly put on a drinks reception in a lovely, lovely hotel. This was encouraged to let people from all walks of life who may have different views and different, in my case, different styles. I was pointed out a few times, people kept going up to me. And one guy didn't know how to say this because he was very worried about offending me, which is silly, say something and offend someone and offend someone. Even you look like you could be on their side. And that's what I got a million times. And the only thing that annoyed me about that, if you can even use the word annoy, because it is, we're all there having a good time, was we need to stop thinking in terms of their side and our side, because that's where you get terms like the far right for having a simple opinion that the general public agree with. I think that plays into the media's hands. There shouldn't be a their side or our side, but I get why it's commonplace to say that. I'm guilty of saying it myself sometimes, and it's a simple way of sort of separating two points of view. I grew up inherently on the left. You could even have called me far left in certain situations. Everyone is left wing when they're young, most people, and then they grow up and they have bills to pay and taxes, and then they kind of go, no, fuck this, and they become a little bit more right. But I do find myself in certain topics still today being on the left, but then there's others that naturally you come down a little bit more on the right with. But I don't think I'm alone on that. I think maybe mine is more extreme, because I genuinely could never find a single person back in the day who supported Jeremy Corbyn and Donald Trump at the same time. So maybe I was alone there. Whenever someone says that to me, you could be on their side. What is their side, man? We shouldn't talk like that. But I do get it. And it's funny because in the opposite side, where I be in circles where there are a lot of left-wing friends or just people around, which is entirely fine. I don't want to ever mix with one or the other. It needs to be both. Otherwise, I'm as guilty as some of the extremists who would call the police on their father for having a different opinion, or who would cut off relationships with their friends for having a different view. If they're mature enough to accept my opinions and my beliefs the way I hope most of my audience are, then as long as your personality's fine and you're up for a laugh and a bit of good conversation, good natured debate, I don't care. I don't give a shit who you are or what your opinion is. But I have experienced it on the other end, where when I'm in those circles, they assume that because I dress a certain way that I'm on their side, so to speak, as well. But the only thing that annoys me then, and this is the opposite of what the right do, is when they find out that you aren't necessarily as 100% for certain things as they may be. Rather than engage and kind of ask why, they just go ooh and walk away and shit like that in a very childish way. It's as if they're annoyed that they were fooled. But I'm not trying to fool anybody. I dress how I dress because I believe in sovereignty. If I wanted, I would be lying to myself if I go to a wedding or an event and kind of go, I have to dress a certain way because I've been told to dress this way. I always find a way to put my own little stamp on things, and I think everyone should. Otherwise, be a sheep, enjoy it, but don't ask me to do the same. To assume everyone thinks the same, and I think the right have a different approach where they're almost happy to when people defy expectations or defy what they presume, and will engage either way, whether you agree or not. This didn't capture on camera because by this point the drinks reception was in full flow, but a guy did say to me outside 20-30 years ago it was cool to be liberal, and he's fucking right, because what did it mean? It meant your freedom. It meant if this movement was started 20 years ago, we would be called far left, because back then, look at the hippie movement of the 60s. It was about sticking it to the man, having your own beliefs, dressing how you want to dress, being who you want to be. They were all left-wing qualities. They wanted the government to stay the fuck out of people's lives. Who does that sound like today? Because it isn't the left. That's where they lost me, at least, and I know I'm not alone in that. I look at Jeremy Corbyn now and I still completely agree with a lot of his values, but as I speak there's an election being held in the UK. The incoming government, Labour Party, aren't even letting Mr Corbyn stand on their behalf anymore. He's been completely ostracised from that party, so the guy's standing as independent. So even me with my beliefs of today, I do still want Jeremy Corbyn to win a seat. Do you know why? Because I think that the House of Commons, just like any other democracy around the world, should have as many different voices in it as possible. So I kind of have almost found myself back in the situation of 2016 or 17 where you have Donald Trump running in America and Jeremy Corbyn running in the UK, albeit not for Prime Minister anymore, but and I'll tell you this now, I no doubt this will probably be repeated many times in this channel. The reason why I supported both of those guys is not because I agree with every point they have. You would be a cultist if you did. It's simply because the Sovereign Project and me stand for the underdog. So when I see someone who's taken on the establishment and wants to shake things up, then you best believe I'm going to be behind them, especially if I agree with a lot of their views. I don't have to agree with every one of their views, and that's again why we should want as many different oppositional voices in a government as possible, because if you don't agree with everything the leading party says, at least there's other parties that can speak out on maybe your behalf. Yeah, those two men, I don't think they can stand each other. I don't think Donald Trump's ever uttered Jeremy Corbyn's name, but Jeremy Corbyn's definitely said a few things about Donald Trump. It would have been fucking terrific though if they had both had been apart at the same time, just because they would have had to engage with each other. That would have been funny to watch, but whatever, in a parallel world. So that's where I stand. We support the underdogs, and make no mistake, there's no bigger underdog at all than the people. So when you have a government, any government, trying to squash the people's right to speak out against that government, or to even share a meme, then you best believe we're going to be there. But yeah, it was a great event. Great opportunity to network and get to know strangers, but also people that I've watched on television for many years, and to speak to them on a human level about what we're facing in Ireland was quite something. And not just facing in Ireland. You'll hear this in the other video itself. Ireland is the home of massive tech companies now. Meta, Google, Microsoft, Apple. So whatever happens in Ireland does affect you watching this wherever you are. If you use social media at all, I'm going to say most of you do, then yeah, you sharing a meme on social media that people don't like could end up with the police knocking at your door if this bill progresses. One of the people I didn't get speaking to on camera as much as I would have liked was Andrew Doyle, whose work I followed from his appearance in Joe Rogan back in the day up till now. And it was actually his show on a British news channel that alerted me to this event happening at all. See, there was no advertising for it, for obvious reasons. So I only first heard of it, ironically, from watching a British television channel. But he was there, along with Father Calvin Robinson, spoke his mind, said something really that I think resonated with a lot of people, I hope, in the audience, certainly me. There's only so many times you can be cancelled before, it's water off a duck's back. And then there was Andino, who, as some of you may know, who since the 2020 riots in America, faced incredible backlash from extremist groups in terms of trying to shut down his opinion, because he was once attacked by these groups and ended up severely hospitalized. To see him on the stage doing his thing, and I managed to grab him after for a quick chat. And naturally, he did seem very reluctant to talk, but I completely get why, given his history. And I did say to the ADF guy, the organisers, that they should put on more of these events in future because they're fantastic for networking. However, you'd like to think hopefully that they wouldn't have to. Being realistic, I can't see that changing anytime soon. Just maybe promote a little bit better. He said to me, he was like, well, where are we going to advertise?
This is a capital X.
Twitter is the only real place that would give you a platform to have any opinion. And that seems to bother a lot of people on Twitter, especially in this election period in the UK. They don't like that there's such clear support for, again, and I'll just mention another underdog. This brings me on nicely to another topic. Reform UK are absolutely the kind of party that 10 years ago I would have been in shock horror at. But from growing and living in a British occupied territory in the north of Ireland and being in the UK for some time, I can see exactly why. I can feel exactly why that party is gaining momentum. And Nigel Farage, let you in a little secret here. Nigel Farage is probably the reason why this is called the Sovereign Project. I'd never said it before. Back in 2016 when Brexit was sort of getting in the gear, that was the one word he kept repeating, was sovereignty. It stuck with me. So whenever you have the media attacking, they went after Corbyn and they're going after Farage in the same way, even though both of those guys have two completely different mindsets. You have to ask yourself why. What are they trying to preserve? Because if it's the status quo of today, then no thank you. It's well out of date. You can't preserve it. It needs reformed. So people beg and scream to protect the NHS. The NHS is on its knees. I am fed up hearing that. We heard it in 2020. We've heard it after. Back in the COVID days, they managed to amalgamate the NHS and gay pride in such an odd way. Do you remember, depends where you're watching from, do you remember seeing on people's windows, they'd have a rainbow sticker with protect our NHS underneath it, or I support the NHS, something dull like that. And no one ever said this because people were afraid to say it, but what the fuck does gay pride have to do with the National Health Service? Where are them two things relevant to each other? This weird thing where they try and put as many different things into one basket so that anyone that opposes one has to oppose everything else. For anyone to say, why is the LGBT flag on your window? What's that got to do with anything about the pandemic?
You're homophobic.
What? No, I'm not. I'm just asking the question. What?
You're homophobic.
You can't speak. How dare you question that? So you see it today with Reform. They're running for general election and people are calling them homophobics, racist, and this, that, and the other for expressing opinions on the NHS or on immigration, that whether you agree with them all or not, can you not feel, compared to 5-10 years ago, the world is a very, very different place. Even if you're not political and you take yourself out of the realm of politics or anything like that, go and try and get an appointment in Britain's NHS. Broken. It's just broken. Look how pathetic certain public services are, how long trains or buses can take. So many streets across the country are just an absolute disgrace. They're a mess, and no council has the time or energy to do anything about it. You could argue that's because they're busy focusing on empty, virtuous platitudes that mean nothing to anybody. Or you could argue that's because, just like seemingly every other job around the world at the minute, people just don't want to work. People aren't doing anything, and I'm all for that, by the way. The less work the better. AI should be doing most of our jobs. That's a whole other different video, but it really should. Don't fear AI, embrace AI. Build AI to do your job and bring in universal basic income. It's the only way that the society's going to prosper. So off topic here, but give people the money to live, and if they want more money on top of that, then they go and work, then they get creative, then they write a song, then they paint a picture, they offer services that AI can't do. That creates innovation. But this phobia people have of AI is
Shut it all down.
no, the genie's out of the bottle and it's here to stay. And I want to see it claim jobs that aren't being fulfilled properly by humans anymore, because I think deep down most of us know that these jobs are completely vapid. They have no reason to exist in 2024, at least not being carried out by a human being. So yeah, bring on AI. But back to the election in the UK, when you see these services not being completed because people are either burnt out or just fed up, then you have to kind of go, well, what's being done to fix this? And no one in the mainstream political parties are acknowledging this. They're just simply not. They want to give personification to the NHS. It's on its knees and call it beautiful. I've heard that. It's not beautiful. And the only thing that's on its knees are the patients that these waning nurses are failing to protect. That's it. That's the only thing that's on its knees. The NHS has plenty of money being given to it constantly, but you know where that money goes? Up the wall on jobs that don't need to exist and on stupid signage that doesn't need to exist. We welcome all people from all walks of life, but we get it. You're a National Health Service, you should. We don't need to hear it. Similarly, that just reminds me, when I was coming back from Dublin on the train, I heard there was an announcement, you know, this sort of program, little announcement, you know, they play it every time in this like robotic lady's voice. Please refrain from attacking the driver. Sexual assault and sexual harassment are not permitted. We will also not tolerate drugs or alcohol. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy your train. And I'm like, I might have enjoyed the journey more had you not have insinuated that we're all delinquent, drunk sex offenders. Even on the tube in England, it's the same. Be kind. Abuse will not be tolerated. Yeah, okay. Most people are good people. Most people just want to live their lives, go home, you know. And it's almost like it's already instilled. Again, coming back to whether that bill passes or not, the fear that it instills is worse. Those kind of signs, even though they're bright and vibrant, and you want to see the Be Kind posters they're lovely to look at. It's all very hippy dippy and like hearts and shit. It looks like something out of the Powerpuff Girls. That's an authoritarian poster that's dressed up to look happy and cheerful, so you don't realize what it is. Really, what that should look like is this, because that's exactly what it means. It's like, be kind or else. If something goes wrong, let me just say, for example, if a driver acts a dickhead, and many of them do, by the way, is incompetent, or if anyone working in these public services aren't up to scratch, that is creating a climate where people feel afraid to kind of go, excuse me, I'm not paying for that. Or, excuse me, can you explain why that happened? Why is the train 20 minutes late? If people are paying for these services out of their fucking taxes, they have a right to demand and know why they're not working properly. So having posters like Be Kind and preemptive announcements whenever everyone's just sitting there at 8 a.m, you know, wanting a coffee and a bagel and just wanting to like rest their eyes before they get back to Belfast, and you have this draconian announcement shutting down to you, don't abuse the driver, don't commit sexual offence, we won't tolerate drinking alcohol. It's like, no one's drinking alcohol, man, it's 8 a.m, calm fucking down. So that's where, you know, I don't know where I was going with that. People can be kind and still kind of demand better. Not even better, just competence. And the whole country is incompetent. Not just the country, the whole West at the minute is incompetent. Nothing works. Since the pandemic, nothing works. It wasn't perfect before the pandemic either, don't get me wrong, but since bureaucracies got in the way, civil servants get in the way, there's just a million other little technocrats get in the way, lobbyists get in the way, big companies that control small companies, the big companies we don't see control the companies we do see. It all gets in the way, and that's where you've got a million people before you get to the man. So it's hard to stick it to the man anymore whenever the man's hiding behind 30 different millions along the way. Try and communicate. I'm trying to at the minute. Try and get through to a subscription service you pay for. Try and call Netflix on the phone. Try and call Uber on the phone. It's fucking almost impossible. So here's a quick story. I mean, very quick, because depending on how they want to go about this, I might make this into a video on itself. Uber One is a recent subscription service that started. It's one of these things. There's a great video actually on that already. It's called it's about de-shitification. What it is they reduce the service of what they used to provide for free. They make it objectively shit, and then introduce a new plan where you're paying for what you used to have for free. Another one that comes to mind is Amazon Prime. You're literally paying the same subscription service now that you would have paid a year ago, only now you get adverts. If you don't want adverts, pay for more. How the fuck does that work? And people accept it. So Uber did this as well. They increased waiting times. A lot of their cars are shitter than they used to be. And then they go, if you want, you know, a quicker delivery, join Uber One. And you're like, okay. And they go, well, you can pay annually. And if you pay annually and you give us all the money now, you get a year subscription to Disney Plus at a reduced price. So I recently boycotted Disney Plus because of another price hike. So I was like, well, fuck you, Disney. Then I saw this advert. I went, you know what? That's a nice way of getting Disney back and getting the bonuses of this Uber shit without having to outright pay Disney. So I signed up for it, waited for my Disney code, and it didn't come. So I managed to call Uber back then, and it was only because I pretended that I was waiting on a food delivery, and then just said to the lady, I was like, I don't care about the food, here's what's going on. And she kind of advised, oh, actually, you're on a free trial for a month. I don't know who gives someone a month's free trial, but you know what, whatever. 30-day free trial, I suppose that's common. So you don't get this Disney package until then, until it's over. Okay, so I had to sit for a month and just kind of wait it out. That was nearly 2 months ago. Since then, I've been waiting. I'm like, where is this Disney code? I have tried calling them. I have tried emailing them. They will not respond. All you get is being taken around in silly fucking loops. Click here for our FAQ page. Do you want to talk to a bot? The only way really that I've found to contact them is Twitter. And even then, it is just a string of stupid DMs back and forth where every day it's like a new person hasn't got a clue what happened the day before and they're asking me to repeat myself. And it's just ridiculous. It's infuriating. And I'm like, I have fucking paid you for this. You have my money. Uphold your end of the bargain, because it is literally false advertising. How else can you dress that up? So depending on when they sort their shit out, I may make a video on that, because I think it's important people know not to, literally, I'll say this now, do not buy, if you see that advert with, who is it? It's a kid from that new Christmas movie, and Robert De Niro, I think. Yeah, you've definitely saw the advert. It's Robert De Niro and the kid from the Christmas movie. If you see that and you're like, oh, Uber One looks good, it doesn't look good, guys. Don't get it. Don't get it. Just fucking leave it. Don't pay for de-shitification. Back to the point. Whenever you're seeing all those services becoming impossible to use, impossible to contact, and just not meeting the function that they should meet, where do you go? Who do you contact? Like, what do you do? It's almost encouraged me on more than one occasion to just go, you know what? I'm moving. I'm living in Fiji. I'm not doing this anymore. We're out. I genuinely feel myself getting more and more wound up each day with having to speak on the phone to banks. Banks are another one. You don't just pay them your money. They have your money. And when you try and contact a bank, it's a million different security fucking things, and they don't trust you. That I had one idiot on the phone from the bank. I asked her, I had like £1,000 that needed to clear, and I moved the money from one account to another. Asked her why it hadn't went into the other account yet. I was told it would be 7 to 12 days. I'm like, what a fake fucking timeline. 7 to 12 days. So I called them after having to jump through a million hoops, and the stupid minion that she is literally asked me, and she could barely speak English, by the way, because everything's outsourced. There's no jobs, guys, but everything's outsourced. So after trying to communicate to her, she then asked me, what do you need the money for? And I'm like, how fucking dare you? It's my money. If I want to take £1,000 and spend it on crack, it has fucking nothing to do with you. They have forgotten, politicians and the people who run the banks, the services, they all have forgotten who is in charge, who they work for, and they work for me and you. They work for us. Don't let them forget that. So when you see a party like Reform in the UK that is actually, whether you agree with their policies, this should really be irrelevant. Whether you agree with all their beliefs or not, do you agree with every belief that every member of the Labour Party, the Democrats in America, do you agree with every single belief they have? Because I'm not being funny, I don't think most of you guys, or myself, or indeed the public, are informed enough about the beliefs of every single politician in a party, nor should we have to be to vote for that party on their overall principle. So for example, I faced a very difficult situation in 2021 where Sinn Féin, that's a party we mentioned before, were running for an election, and I have voted for them for most of my adult life, and all of my adult life, and this was the one time I went, you know what, fuck you. And the reason why was because of how they handled the COVID pandemic. You know, they are a party that literally their first point of being is to protect the freedoms of people of Ireland, to resist British occupation in Ireland, and to strive for Irish unity one day. So whenever you had that party imposing Britain's will on the very people there that elected them to oppose that will, and they're imposing it, then you're kind of going, yeah, no. But I had to kind of look at myself and kind of go, what other party is championing Irish unity in the way they are? So what do you want to do here, man? Do you want to weigh up how they handled, the COVID situation? I'm not going to lie. At the time I went, no, I don't give a shit. Fuck it, because it was very raw. But similarly, they have views on other topics that I don't agree with. But you have to kind of think, and this goes to all of you, about any party, what's your overriding concern? If the majority of the UK, if their overriding concern is the fact, and I think most of us feel it, nothing fucking works, well then, don't be surprised when a party like Reform, that's the only party that's saying nothing works, is doing very well in polls. No one expects them to win a place in government because of how Britain's ancient voting mechanisms work. Hopefully that will change in future. And I actually think it will take that party to do very well and win very little seats for that to change. You would like to think. I mean, there is a word that exists here, and I can't get my head around it either, where Reform UK, a brand new party, could get more votes than the Conservative Party that have ruled Britain for 14 years. They could get more votes than them and end up with like 7 seats, while the Conservatives dropped to a low of 50 seats, which is a low for the previous government to have. 50 seats is terrible.
but it's a hell of a lot more than what this new party will get, even though they got less votes. In what world is that a democracy? That just doesn't work. While I'm talking about it, I will just say as well, none of what I'm saying right now, I can do anything to change, because Reform UK aren't even running in this part of Ireland. They're running behind a really fucking weird, bitter, sectarian party in the TUV, Traditional Unionist Voice, that I would never have voted for. And I understand that just that acronym and what it stands for to someone from Britain, indeed to a Reform voter or to Reform themselves, I understand entirely how that sounds like they're the kind of party that should be your sister party in Ireland. I completely get that. Britain don't understand Ireland. They don't understand their history in Ireland. I spoke to a couple the other day down in Dublin that were from the UK who were over visiting, told me they plan on foot reform because, and I'll just say what they said, they didn't like how many Muslims were in the country. They felt like they were being invaded. That was their opinion. And I simply put it to her, and this was an elderly lady, so I wasn't going to argue with her, but I simply put it to her nicely that if the British electorate feel like they're being invaded by foreigners or whatever have you, how do you think the people of the north of Ireland feel still to this day, when a lot of what goes on here is being dictated to by a foreign entity in Westminster who have no interest in Ireland anyway and only still preside over it by default? So I asked her that. I was like, how do you think we feel? Because we literally were invaded, but not just metaphorically or emotionally. We were invaded, and that invasion has never ended. So, and do you know what she said? I have to hold my hands up and say fair play. She simply said to me, I'm not informed about that. We're very ignorant to that. I don't understand that. Which infuriates me in many ways, because it's sort of like there's nothing more insulting than, and I don't class that lady as an oppressor of Ireland, of course not, but in terms of Britain, there's nothing more insulting than your oppressor not even caring or understanding about how they came to oppress you or how it can end. So when you have Nigel Farage and his party, Richard Tice, I admire Richard Tice. People kind of go, don't trust a billionaire. What would a billionaire know about running a country? Why would you want a millionaire or an entrepreneur running your country? And this goes to Rishi Sunak as well. I'm not a fan of Rishi Sunak. The guy's unelected. Never forget that. The Prime Minister of the UK for the last 2 years was not elected by anyone. None of us voted for Rishi Sunak. He is a plastic politician who should not be there. But I did have sympathy for him the other day when he was asked what he didn't have as a child growing up because he's so wealthy. And the guy said, Sky TV. And the memes and everyone mocking him online were quite real. Because, oh, you didn't have Sky, Rishi, did you not? No, people are like, kind of taking the piss, being like, families go without food, but you had to go without Sky. Oh, I took a different approach where it's like, you know what? If that's how the guy lived, okay, I'm not bitter about it. I had Sky, so maybe that's why. It's because I want to see people do well. I think anyone who doesn't want to see someone have money is a pretty nasty individual who just obviously doesn't want to make money themselves. So whenever I hear about an entrepreneur, I want to speak to them. I want to understand them and get inside their mind and know how I can benefit from that. What can I learn from them? I think most rational people would as well. But this weird thing people have about Rishi Sunak, he has a lot of faults. The fact he's not elected is one of them. One thing that's not a fault of his is the fact that he's wealthy, or that his missus is wealthy. People said about Donald Trump as well. Oh, he's a reality star. Oh, yeah, of a really successful reality show. Oh, he's just a real estate agent. He's a tar in New York. They made a gold with his name on it. I couldn't think of a better guy to be president. It's fucking hilarious. Not just because it's hilarious, because clearly he gets shit done. I don't live in the US, obviously. I don't know what Joe Biden has got done in the last few years, other than increasing the amount of people coming into the country and standing there looking bewildered. But the difference is, he is a career politician. Joe Biden has been in politics for many, many decades, longer than I've been alive. When you see people like Richard Tice and Nigel Farage, they're successful people. So they're not there to pander to lobbyists and to big corporations. And you know what? Maybe it is all a lie. Let's just say it. Let's just play devil's advocate. Genuinely, I'm like, honestly. Because there is many people who have the concern populist parties lie to you to get into power, but it's all a lie. They're not going to deliver on what they're saying. Yeah, okay. Do any other parties? Genuinely, look at the Liberal Democrats. It's a third party in the UK, technically. They famously in 2010 betrayed their manifesto. They got into bed with the Tory government of 2010, just laughed in the face of students.
That we couldn't keep all our promises. Above all, our promise not to raise tuition fees.
It's the reason I never went to university. I was like, out of principle. It wasn't that I couldn't afford £9,000 to pay it. It was, I don't think so. And then the old argument is this: if you don't go to uni, people were trying to convince me, friends at the time, oh man, you should go to uni. No, I'm not paying the British government. Sorry. Especially whenever these idiots said they wouldn't be doing that. No, but you don't pay it back until you earn a certain amount. Yeah, okay. If I go to university, fucking fuck off, man. You know what I would love to see? I'd love to see a party stand up and announce a bill to exterminate all flies across the country. That would be great. But anyway, what was it? Liberal Democrats. So yeah, speaking of flies. So people would always say, no, Zayne, listen, like if you don't have to pay it back until you earn a certain amount, how is that a pro? Oh no, it is, because no, it isn't. If I went to university, I'm going because I want to earn a certain amount. I want to earn above and beyond that certain amount. So someone tell me who clearly has low aspirations and was only going just to party anyway, which is fair enough. But if someone's telling me, no, you don't have to pay it back and tell them, well, that just tells me a lot about yourself. Clearly you're setting the bar very low, aren't you? Do you know? That's how it feels anyway. It's like, what are you coming out of university for if not to earn a lot of money? What did you go for? So you want to go to university for 4 years, be in debt, but don't worry, if you get a job at McDonald's or something stupid like that, you don't have to pay it back. What was the point in fucking going there? So what I'm trying to say is that the Reform Party would not be the first, if they are liars, they would not be the first party to lie to get into government at all. Look at Nick Clegg. By the way, in 2010, Nick Clegg was like this shiny little, not as shiny as David Cameron's forehead, but I was in school in 2010 and I was doing my homework and I looked up to the TV during the ITV, and I believe, you know what, I didn't know this at the time, that was the UK's first ever leaders debate. Ever. It was a very American thing back then. It still is. Oh, speaking of which, Donald Trump and Joe Biden are debating, I believe, like 10 days, so stay tuned there. Yeah, so this was like, you know, the UK's first debate. And I remember looking up and just seeing blue for Tories, the red for Labour, and this yellow guy, and just being like, you know what, you seem like a nice dude. You seem like a nice guy, Nick Clegg. You seem like you care about the people. Then the election came, he jumped in the bed with the Tories, sold everyone down the river, and now what does Nick Clegg do? Nick Clegg works for Facebook. So whenever they tell you about Nigel Farage and so, oh, they're liars, they're dangerous, aren't they all? But the thing is, you've got to take a gamble. Politics is all about taking a gamble, really. I'd rather take a gamble. If I could vote Reform, I would. I'm just not going to vote for a party like the TUV that I believe Reform themselves don't even understand properly. And I believe come 2029, Reform will have candidates standing in Ireland anyway, which will only help their votes. I don't know why they didn't just do it. I kind of guess it was probably, as Nigel Farage keeps saying, it was called, the election came as a shock, and, you know, everyone expected it to be November, now it's July. But in 5 years' time, they should have their shit in order, that they'll have candidates standing in Ireland, which will obviously get them more seats. And to be honest, and this goes against everything I believe in as an Irish Republican, and I believe I'm probably the only Irish Republican I can find, but trust me, it's the only place to be right now, who is sympathetic towards Reform, who has any real interest or affiliation for British politics. But if they wanted to save the Union, because Ireland will leave the UK, that's inevitable. But if they wanted to give the people here who support the Union any hope, because the Unionist parties here are abhorrently laughable and incompetent and just they're not even real politicians. What is a real politician? But Donald Trump certainly isn't. But these guys, the thing with Donald Trump and Nigel Farage and such is they don't pretend to be. They're not trying to be real politicians. The idiots who run the Unionist parties here genuinely think they're politicians, and people look at them here and take their word as gospel and believe that they have some sort of authority. A lot of them come into the positions they're in now because of the conflict that went on here for 40 years, and by the end of it, you had people who were sometimes involved in that conflict directly, then ended up kind of going into parties. Because, you know, if they couldn't shoot each other, we'll get each other at the ballot box. Don't get me wrong, a lot of those people actually have done quite well, but most of them haven't. Most of them still haven't got a clue. So at least if they had a party like Reform UK that actually has some sort of substance to it in terms of what it's saying, and it isn't just keep Northern Ireland in the Union, which is all the Unionist politicians here say. They have nothing to offer Westminster. They're laughed at Westminster. You have to go back to 2017 when the DUP, actually, I said about the Liberal Democrats in 2010, propping up the Tory government. In 2017, the DUP, which was the leading party in the north of Ireland, ended up propping up the Tory government as well, only because they wanted to get Brexit over the line. And now the DUP cry about Brexit. But this is what I mean. Whenever they came to Westminster and they were in government, they literally were the governing party of the UK. This random little fringe group of complete dullards from the north of Ireland ended up governing the UK for a short period of time, 2 years maybe, and they did nothing to benefit here at all. They were promised more money to go towards here. No one saw any of it. It hasn't made a blind bit of difference to the state of this shithole. But more crucially, nobody in Westminster and nobody in the British public knew who they were. They were irrelevant. They were an embarrassment to us and an irrelevance to them. So at least if Reform stood in Ireland, it would give the people here who support the Union something to kind of latch on to and kind of go, you know what, at least they'll be heard in Westminster. And I'm an Irish Republican, as I said, if I'm being honest, in terms of strategy, it's Reform's best bet. You'd like to think, wouldn't you, that if something stops recording, then I would stop hearing my voice in my ear to kind of let me know to stop recording. Or do you know what? Maybe just vibrate or make a little beep. Something to tell me, saying, you know, the SD card's full, man. Do you want to like check it? But as I said before, nothing fucking works anymore. I would like to think that there's a lot of people watching this that disagree with me, because if I ever have an audience that is entirely on my side, then I've done something wrong. But what have you got to lose? In terms of, I'm speaking directly to the electorate in Britain here, if it comes to those two parties, and you see the media this time around, out of fear, have constantly kept pedaling on the line. Okay, but it's between two parties. It's between two parties. How dare anyone consider voting for anyone other than the two main parties? That needs to change. It's even the same in America. As much as I have time for Donald Trump, they keep trying to make it between Biden and Trump. There's no room for RFK. You know, there's no room for his politics or his point of view. It's just Biden and Trump. So we need to try and take the binary out of politics, this one or the other, and look at, well, who else is putting things on the table? And if one of the people putting things on the table is saying what a lot of the country thinks, it may not be in the way people want it to be said. I personally have no problem with the way Farage says things, but just similarly to Trump's mean tweets, if things are getting done, then why do you give a shit how offensive they are? Do you know what I mean? I'd rather live in a world where someone's offensive and aggressive, or maybe a little bit distasteful in certain ways, but gets things done, than live in a world where everyone's plastic and fake and overly nice whenever you know they're not really, and get nothing done other than public appearances every now and then. You see this as well every election period. Labour and the Tories, they all go out, one of the leaders, they'll visit like a factory or something stupid like that and put on a little high-vis vest and a construction hat. Are the cameras rolling, guys? This shows that we're down with the people, where we know the average man, we know the working man. You notice Farage hasn't had to do that, just by speaking his mind and being relatable and being consistent. Actually, the working man already trust him, so politicians like that don't really have to cosplay as a commoner. And that's really what it is. I actually find it quite, if we're going to be a little bit woke about it, I find it a bit offensive, actually. But how is the media's treatment of him? And more importantly, I'd argue, some of the deranged members of the public that are brainwashed by the media, how does their treatment of him encourage anyone else, any other underdogs, from ever wanting to stand for election? How does that promote democracy? I'm talking, of course, about Farage being attacked twice in the space of a week. Some OnlyFans bent through a milkshake at his face, and then you had some random dude throwing wet cement at him. Those acts in themselves are ridiculous. But then you've got the sheep. Yes, this is great. What? Because that would be a hate crime. If that was anybody else, that would be outrageous. But because it's someone that they disagree with, it's absolutely, it's not just fine, it's the best thing ever. People on Twitter give this girl a knighthood, slay queen slay, and all this shit, just for throwing a milkshake in a man's face, someone's father's face, because he says things that you don't agree with, or because the media have told you what a bad guy he is. Think for your fucking self. And if you still don't like them, well, then contain yourself like an adult would and vote someone else on the day, or go and make a video like this and say your little opinions, or comment underneath this if you want and say your opinions. Don't take to the streets and attack a politician because you don't agree with what they say. Do you know how many times, Ireland's a small country, particularly the part that's occupied, do you know how many times I've run into DUP members that I vehemently disagree, massively disagree with, that have said things against my community, that have said things against me, that treat traditional Catholics, I'm not a Catholic, but culturally I suppose I come from that background, or have stood by terrorists who have attacked my community. Do you see me attacking those people on the street? Like, I have genuinely been sitting having a margarita, this is more recently. The Deputy First Minister, who is from the DUP, walked past me by herself while I'm sitting just outside a bar having a margarita. If I had the camera, I probably would have maybe went and challenged her on camera. That's because of what I do. If I didn't do this, I probably would just sit there and go, what a bitch, and have my drink. Getting up and attacking her, if I did that, I would be arrested in 2 seconds. Nobody would have any support from me whatsoever, and rightfully so, because you'd be an immature brat, and all you do is set your cause back. So you have a woman like that, the OnlyFans girl, that attacked Nigel Farage based on he's racist. You have to assume that's what it was, because the media told her shit. They're attacking him on behalf of other people because of comments he's maybe made in the past about immigration. Control yourself the way I do, and that's why I pointed out the fact that the party that lady represented has attacked my community directly, and I still wouldn't attack them because it's hilariously pathetic and it flies in the face of democracy. It just simply does. These are, of course, the same people, by the way, who would call the likes of Farage and his party, probably me as well, who would call anybody that disagrees with them a fascist or a bigot or an extremist. That's going back to the conference I was at the other day. I don't see anybody on that side of the fence attacking someone because of their beliefs. The venue that conference was held at had to be, they told me afterwards, they booked 2 different venues for it. They had to keep the location secret, and it was just in case the first one was leaked that so-called progressive extremist groups would attack that venue, that they had a backup one ready to go. That's the climate we're in. So yeah, it's an exciting time, very much so. There has been numerous times where we could have launched the Sovereign Project earlier than this, and
I never did, for plenty of reasons that we'll go into one day. But this is just too good to miss. An election in Britain, momentum in Ireland, and of course a beautiful election to round off the year in November in America. And God knows what else in between, by the way. I said this in 2021, and I'll say it again now. The world changes so fast these days, and rather than sit by and cry about it, I like to have a laugh and watch the chaos with you guys and engage in conversation with people that I do and don't agree with, as long as you will have me. And that's about it, guys. So thanks for watching this episode of the Server Project. I hope you like our new set. You can of course check out the video that we mentioned at the start of this at the Irish Free Speech Summit. I'm sure some of you may recognise a few faces on it. Some of those people anyway, no doubt, will make an appearance on this very programme at some point in time. But yeah, until then, go watch the video whenever it is edited. And I have made a point of uploading a lot of the old stuff from before this channel was actually created back onto YouTube. You'll see them archived, more humble beginnings, if you wish to go and have a little look. But yeah, until next time, guys, stay sovereign.